Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the ruffed grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Long.
Welcome back to the Give for Grouse podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Cody Altizer, and today I come to you, our listeners, with a broken heart. If you could see me, you'd see tears, you'd see a big frown that is yet to be turned upside down. Eric, the highlight of the Give for Grouse initiative for at least the last month was his brand new beard. And he has broken my heart, and I'm sure those of you guys watching and listening as well, and shaved it clean off. Much to the dismay of all of us, Eric is back to clean shaven.
It's my job. I've been breaking hearts since I was like 8, Cody.
I had a feeling...
It's a curse. I don't know what to tell you.
I had a feeling that you did, but you hadn't said anything. I candidly didn't care enough to ask, but I was like, I haven't seen you. You know, we talk on the phone every day just about, but we go for a while without seeing each other, you know, face to face or phone to phone or whatever. I was like, I bet when we get on this Zoom call today,
What made
I'm
you
going to have to put on my sunglasses to be blinded by this white skin.
It's going to take a little bit to get some sun on it. It was rocking, was it not?
I have always been a fan.
No, man. I tell you, no. I got home from Virginia a couple weeks back, I think it was, right? And I was like, what is in my beard? And there was a tick. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm out. I'm out. It's hot anyway. And I'm not used to having one anyway. So if I always had one like you, it would like be flick. You would have just flicked the tick. To me, I was like, I don't need to be
breaker.
Worrying about that. So yeah, I cut my hair. I was letting my hair grow. I was just becoming, Hank Jr. 2.0. It's just like finding my inner Bocephus here. And
Tick
and
is
what
a
my
deal
baby
breaker.
wants, my baby gets. She likes it.
Mm-hmm.
She likes it smooth.
I don't know if you remember, a long time ago, around when I think literally the year you and I first met, I was in the process of growing my hair out.
Dude, it was the flow, people. We have to post that picture one of these times. Just randomly, the first time Cody and I got together, it was a consult at his place, and the flow, like, it was amazing.
It was starting to get some
tick.
length to it. It
Yeah.
was when and the same thing happened. I think I was hanging a deer stand, and my hair you can't tell it now, is thick. I have a thick head of hair, blessed to have a thick head of hair. So like, I was trying to grow it out, get some length to it, but it just kept getting thicker and thicker before it started to get some length. So anyway, I was hanging a deer stand, I think, and found a tick in my hair on my head. And I was like, that's enough of that. In hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have done it because I was about a year into it. And when I cut it, it was because I've always wanted to have enough hair to put it in a man bun.
Oh boy.
And it was just close enough to do that.
Yeah.
But the tick robbed me of my man bun opportunity. But it's on my radar as I get older and my hair grays. When it's all gray, I'm gonna let it grow out and have a
Just
full
let it
head,
grow.
gray head of hair. You've seen my dad.
Oh yeah.
I know what to look forward to.
Oh yeah.
Breaks my heart he doesn't let his grow out. Gray beard, gray full head of hair.
Yeah.
Tie it back in a
The problem was mine wasn't gray. It was white. It's like
right. We were filming. Like I had to turn down the exposure on the camera a little bit when we did all the filming.
True that, man. It's your face. It's the problem. I kept on hearing that. I'm like, here, you can just like crop it.
Change your
Anyway, so no, yeah. So it gone. It'll come back. I think I was thinking myself, convincing myself when bird season comes in here, September. I want to hit North Dakota or South Dakota. I want to hit it running. So yeah, we'll get her back up and running. And yeah, continue breaking hearts, man. So yeah.
Braver than I am. I get sidetracked a little bit. My nephew, Kit, who you know, is 7 for the last 2 years. I don't know why his parents won't let him. He wants to be bald. He wants to shave his head, go bald.
Yeah.
And I keep trying to like leverage somehow, and I always tell him, like, if you go bald, I'll shave my beard. I want to, but I'm not brave enough to just do just a mustache. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Shave the
I'm trying
beard.
to picture you with just a mustache.
I think it would. I don't know how it would turn out. I'm not brave enough to try, but I'm like, I guess I'm using my 7-year-old nephew. Like, if you go bald, I'll do this. So like, if we could do it together. We need to. I need some incentive to try it.
Yeah.
I'm not brave enough to try it.
Yeah. Well, stick some gum in his hair on purpose. Just like, hey, look, and just stick it. It's like, oh, we got to cut it.
Cut it, I guess.
Anyway, so all right. Now that Cody has publicly humiliated me, let's get down to brass tacks here.
Homework. Do you have your
Homework
stickers?
time. I have one.
I don't have mine in front of me. I'll go hunting for them.
Nope, it's all right. We got it. I got the quail.
Well, I'll talk about it. You can be visual proof. Homework item, stickers. As always, leave us a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave us a 5-star rating or review. Screenshot it. Send it to us to prove that you did with your address, and we will send you one of these stickers: ruffed grouse and a chainsaw, or a bobwhite quail, and a drip torch. We have merchandise for sale, t-shirts and hoodies of this design of the grouse and the chainsaw. T-shirts are $25. Color is gray. It looks sharp.
It does.
I mean, gray doesn't sound like a cool color, but like, I don't have it on me. But this shows up well on a gray t-shirt. $25, true to size. Hoodies, same thing, gray, are $30. If you are wanting to buy a hoodie, order a size up because they do run a little bit small. So if you typically wear a large for the hoodies, order an extra large and it will fit you snugly.
Yes.
Like a warm hug. That's all I got for homework today.
Yeah.
Stickers and t-shirts and hoodies.
Yeah. So today's guest, I'm excited to have her. Listen to that. Have her on our podcast. She's a up and coming, kicking some butt forester. Mrs. Paige Rice with Ohio Division of Forestry. She's a service forester for a handful of counties in Southeast Ohio. And I did a job with her, I think it was last year, and it was like, I spent several hours with her, and it was like, I think I even called you. Didn't I not call you like afterwards? Like, dude, this girl's a rock star. And I usually don't do this, not because people don't deserve it, but I called her supervisor afterwards. I was driving down the road, and it's like, I just met one of your girls, like a forester, and she was incredible. Like, I don't know, the way she handled my client, and her knowledge was just spot on, and I've been wanting to get her on, and we've been wanting to get her on, and finally her schedule has allowed that to happen. And yeah, just more of a get to know Paige and see what happens from there. So.
I'm excited. You've spoken highly of her. Our mutual friend, Al James of Vitalized Seed, has as well.
Yeah.
For some reason, or maybe just in my dealings, conversations when I go up to see you with people that you know and work with, I feel like her name has circulated.
Yes.
I'm familiar with it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I've never met her, obviously never talked to her. So I'm excited because she comes so highly regarded.
Yeah. If anything else, she puts a big smile on my face. So I can't wait to have her on. So without further ado, let's get Paige on. Well, today, like we mentioned, we have Miss Paige Rice on our podcast.
Howdy,
and she works. Yeah. Paige works for Ohio Division of Forestry, and she's a service forester for the Division of Forestry for certain counties in southeastern Ohio. And yeah, so instead of me telling everybody about you, Paige, why don't you um, tell everybody about you?
Yeah, Burr. Yep. So I'm the service forester down here in Monroe, Noble, and Belmont. Three counties, very heavily forested. But I don't know if you've touched on, what service foresters do in comparison with consulting foresters or anything like that. But we are basically free advice always. We work for the public. So if you are the public and you have property with forest on it, and whether you know exactly what to do or you don't have a clue what's even in your woods, that's where we come in. We can come take a peek with you, walk your woods, tell you what you got, both good and bad, where to go from there, come up with a game plan. Um, Based on what your goals, what your objectives are, whether it's hunting or timber or both, or just, aesthetics, things like that. So we're just out there in the I always say that we're in the world of inspiration. So usually usually you kind of don't know what you don't know until we get out there and explain, a little bit of what you got, and
Yeah.
then we go from there. So
Yeah. Why don't you, how long you been doing that?
So I was with the National Wild Turkey Federation for a year, 2022, I think, 21 or 22.
Hmm.
Or no, it's 2020. And then I've been here for about 4 years or so, a little over 4 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Enjoying what you're doing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Would try to be in the woods every day, so can't beat that.
Well, good deal. So, what is the difference for people that are just getting into this? Because we have a lot of people listening to podcasts that are just getting into this timber whole thing that Cody and I have been preaching and stuff. Like, why would I call a service forester instead of just, whatever?
Yeah, so difference between me and a consulting forester, consulting forester, they are private foresters. Usually, the first time they come out, it's free of charge. So they're going to do something similar to what I'm going to. They're going to talk with you, like I said, figure out what you're interested in and where you want to go from here. And they'll tell you, what you have in your woods. And whether you're interested in a timber sale or not, they can go beyond into that. That's kind of where I have to stop. So I can say I can tell you what species you have, whether it's merchantable, size, size of the property. Is it going to be enough to get a logger in there to actually get it done? They can kind of crunch the numbers. They can mark timber. They can facilitate a timber sale. They can come up with a timber sale agreement slash contract and, put that out for bid, bring bids back in and, the whole process through and through. So I'm basically in the line of education. Um,
Hmm.
I'm gonna tell you what you got, and then if you need a consulting forester, I can get you a list of those folks and go
Yeah.
from there.
And you can also, help people out as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, like some programs and stuff like that that might
Yeah.
be compatible with what they want to do or goals and stuff like that.
Yep, there are NRCS programs like Equip, CSP, things like that. There's a couple, I believe, Division of Wildlife programs like WHI, that's geared more towards, quail, potentially grouse habitat,
Hmm.
potentially turkey, things like that. There's some tax break programs that we facilitate. Just it's never ending. There's always a new program. So.
Yeah. Well, good deal. That's the same thing what you got going down there in Virginia, don't you, Cody?
Yeah, it sounds similar. I guess Jesse Owen would be the equivalent
Hmm.
in terms of, and that may be his. In the, I
Might
think
be
he is
his
one of
time.
our dedicated listeners. If he's listening, I don't want to drop the ball on his title, but I do think he is a service forester. If that's not his title, a lot of the same responsibilities that Paige
Yeah.
just highlighted. It sounds like a sweet gig, Paige. Honestly,
It's kind of the hat.
She has a smile on her face, Cody.
right?
Look at that. What's a
I'm stuck in the office and I'm still smiling. So that means I get outside enough.
Yeah.
But like shed season, mushroom season, you're the first to hear the gobbles every spring. If I wish I was here in the Drummond, but we're in a pickle over here. Um, but yeah, it's pretty
Where in
sweet.
Southeast Ohio are you, Paige? I know you mentioned the counties. Eric, am I familiar with that, or is that I've
No,
never been there?
no. It's when you're on 77 going like through Marietta, okay? And when you get like heading toward Cambridge, it'd be counties on the right side of 77.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's mildly helpful
Surrounded
by
by
no
Wayne
fault of
National
your own.
Forest.
What's
Gotcha.
that?
Surrounded by Wayne National Forest. It's
Yeah.
middle of nowhere. It's how we want to keep it.
That's right.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Horrible places to be. Don't go there. That's what Cody always says, talks about Virginia. It's like, it's bad.
Hate
It's,
it.
you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be.
Don't waste your
Yeah, you
time.
don't.
Well, in
Yeah.
your service area page, you kind of hinted at there's. I mean, it's no secret to us, or I'm sure anybody listening. Grouse aren't super abundant, I would imagine. Um, in the three counties that you work in, how often do you see them, like, ever? Do you hear stories of landowners? Do they have experiences with them? Um, I know the situation isn't good, but how bad is it? Just to ask you candidly, in terms of grouse, and a little bit speak to the forest management and amount of young forest. And again, I'm piling questions on top of you at this point, but a lot of the forestry practices are landowners actively managing their forests. So just kind of lead into it with grouse, but then just kind of branch off of that, and your ongoings and workings with private landowners. What are you seeing in terms of forest management?
Yep. So you gotta bear with me too, because I got a case of squirrel brain on top of postpartum. Like we're just working with a bowl of scrambled eggs right now.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, so there are a few grouse hanging on. Honestly, it's a very small pocket where it seems like things are, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago for most other places. Actually, right close to our house. I mean, last summer, my husband saw four of them cross the road, which is kick butt. But like, you don't see it very often. And then I've had a couple landowners. I had one that you hear stories of the one little grouse that follows the guy around. And
Yeah.
so this thing he would go sit all day deer hunting. It would follow him in and it'd fly up on it was like one of the tree stands that has the kind of rack thing in front of him. And it would sit up there with him.
No.
And for a little while, it'd go fly down and eat something and come right back up. So I don't know what happened with that little fella. He ate too many berries or something. I don't know. Um, but I mean, you hear a few here and there. Currently they have grouse. You hear a bunch of old timers about, oh, back in the day it was the heyday and now there's like nothing and what the heck happened and everybody has their theories and depending how educated you are in it, there's a billion different things that kind of compound. We know forest management is, I don't want to say the cure all, but it's a pretty good prescription.
Mm.
Um, so, okay, that's one question down. Okay, clear cuts. So there are not very many like commercial clear cuts. It just doesn't really happen unless someone has a pure pine stand. And even that, it's really hard to sell. So our paper mill in Chillicothe, it closed down. I believe it was
It
before
was last year or
Christmas of
so, wasn't it? 2 years ago, maybe?
2025, 24. Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, and so that market is completely gone. There was a little bit of it was like a firewood export uh, market, I guess, and so that was kind of going good for a while, and then now they're just because the paper mill closed down, they're so full, like they're not accepting a whole bunch of new stuff. But I mean, patch clear cuts, as far as folks who aren't necessarily interested in the, timbering and the, financial side of things, if they just want to manage for grouse, manage for turkeys, for deer bedding, for things like that, they'll do patch clear cuts, and that's where I can come in and kind of prescribe areas that might be good opportunities to do that. You're not going to do a super great oak stand and completely clear cut it, but little pockets here and there, you could definitely accomplish some good stuff. So there there's an increasing number of landowners who are getting way more interested in that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So it's really cool to see. It's kind of folks that are, I don't know, not really like inheriting the ground, the property. It's folks that are buying properties for hunting, and kind of getting out of just the deer mindset and more into like the whole property as a whole, managing for health, for diversity, for all of these good things. So that's been a really cool thing to see.
That's a trend that you've been seeing is people are kind of focusing on bigger picture, the entire ecosystem, all
Mhm.
wildlife, and kind of stepping away from the deer. It's encouraging.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it is slightly on a small scale.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And so you fight with it every day thinking, well, like you look out the window and you see invasive species everywhere and it's like everything's piling up, but you have to have the mindset of, every new landowner, every new property is an opportunity to, educate, to, every acre matters. So you're reducing the seed source, you're creating better habitat, more diversity. And it's as long as you're working from the ground up, even, insects matter. So getting people out of the mindset of deer and turkeys and more into the entire ecosystem, you build it from the ground up, and it's going to work out pretty well.
God, you had Cody at every acre counts.
You said a lot of things that I
He
say all the
was
time. It was like,
I was looking at him
I
like,
felt
oh boy,
validated.
here we go. Yeah.
We
If I
need
can
like
just
I feel,
convince
I
Cody
feel
to
the
get out
small
the back,
violin in the
yeah,
background.
yeah, yeah. If I can convince Cody just to get a backpack sprayer on and spray some of his invasives, we would get in somewhere. But he doesn't do anything. So anyway, that's all he does. Paige, he walks around here pretty soon. It's attached to his back during the dormant season, and then he'll be pretty quick. It's like my wife will go, you hear from Cody? It's like, no. Oh, you got a girlfriend? No, he's spraying. He's spraying. He's spraying. He's
Well,
spraying.
you get a girlfriend and you'll have two backpacks
twice.
sprayers.
Well, I tell you, if you find me a girlfriend who'd be happy to help me spray invasive species, then God's looking out for me there. I tell you.
There you go.
If you find one, send her my way.
Sent to Virginia. Oh, anyway. So, you mentioned a couple times, and I talked to somebody. This has been a while, Cody. Remember we talked about call before you cut,
Yeah.
and Cody and I talked about maybe, promoting something of that nature, and didn't really realize it. But it was already there is already that going on, this like campaign. So yeah, if you could touch on that, that's interesting because I know as many times as we talk to people, we talked to one of your cohorts, John Keene, and he was telling some war stories. People up in Northeast Ohio, excuse me, they just prey on people. Some of the logging community, and they're all not bad, obviously. But a call before you cut, especially dealing with CAUV and all that stuff, and it's just a good campaign to start promoting. So yeah, what's your role and explain what that is?
Yeah, so Call Before You Cut, I think that was actually John Keene's brainchild, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. And then it expanded from there. And so it's basically, they advertise it, but it's just normal people calling the service forester first. Usually it starts out with, I have X amount of acres in this county and I think it's ready to harvest. Can you come look at it? I just don't know. Usually it's, do you have a list of loggers? Or it's, hey, somebody's been knocking on my door and saying I have timber value, but I don't know if I do. So can you come take a look? And so we schedule it, come out. Honestly, I would say 70% of the properties are not ready to harvest, whether it's
Hmm.
the size of the trees, or it could just be totally inundated with invasive species. So the closer you get to the river, the worse the invasives are. And it's just if you disturb that, if you increase sunlight, you're not going to have regeneration. You're going to have invasive species spread through those pockets where you took trees out. So whether it's manage first and then kind of give them a timeline of like, hey, manage for 3 years or manage your invasive species for 3 years. Maybe you need a cull tree removal instead of thinking timber harvest right now. And then we assess 10 to 15 years from now. Maybe they do have trees that are merchantable, but there's a ton that isn't. And so maybe management is the first step rather than go ahead and cut it. Because if you cut it, you give it a haircut, it's up to Mother Nature what comes in, sorta, kind of, sorta.
Yeah.
If you manage ahead of time and you get your future trees already growing, you have a little bit more certainty on what's going to come in. Um, there are situations where it's like, yep, call the forester right now, you're good to go. If markets are good, they could sell right now. So it's just kind of seeing what's there. Every property has different opportunities and different obstacles, and you just have to assess that as you go.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't heard, like, you don't see it. You don't, it's like the promotion of it. It's just not, I guess if you're wanting to join it into the CAUV, if you just purchase a new property or your property taxes are just getting crazy and you're like, all right, I've heard of the CAUV thing, which is a tax relief thing for agriculture and forest ground. And is that where the people are finding the information, or is it just, I mean, because Paige, I haven't heard anything until John said something
Yeah, I think like I don't know.
at the auditor site, maybe auditors, something like that.
I'm not even sure if the auditors have it out there. I don't know if it's individual foresters put out information more. I mean, I've seen it on like social media and stuff.
Okay.
Um, if Division of Forestry shares it, it's at the state fair. If we have, I started my own woodland interest group where landowners can come. We put out presentations and we always have resources there that, call before you cut and here's some fact sheets on different invasive species you might see and like, just things laid out on the table. So we're always encouraged to put out different like, flyers or little cards or whatever with it on there. But I don't know as far as like billboards, no. So you got one on us there.
Okay. All right. You said, what was it? What's this thing that you have? Interest group? What is it?
Yeah, so there are several like forest land owner interest groups. They're all named different, whatever. Ours is we call it the Ohio River Valley Woodland Owner Group. It's really long, terrible name. Um, but it's basically my 3 counties and like the ones that buffer. That's usually where we're pulling people from, but we have different presentations, usually 3 or 4 throughout the year, just based on what they want to hear about. So I've done like maximizing native habitat for wildlife, a presentation on that. We've done invasive species seminars, in the field, hands-on how to do it. We're getting ready to have one this fall that is on a property that this person has done like 20 acres of a mid-story removal with patch clear cuts, and it's going to have a live demo of cull tree removal and invasive control and things like that. So just getting the landowners out there and kind of taking away the fear because you tell them about all these things and you have to buy this certain herbicide and mix it with diesel and do this and that and use a hatchet, but don't do it on tree heaven and like just all the info. It's probably pretty intimidating at first. And so
Hmm.
getting them there to be able to see it and have them realize that it's something that's very, very doable for your average landowner.
Hmm.
It's definitely helped and it's drummed up a lot of interest for people to
Oh,
actually
great.
go out and manage their woods.
Paige, you've mentioned invasives a lot. When you're working with private landowners, are they receptive to the work? Because obviously you're encouraging them to remove invasive species. What percentage of landowners that you work with are receptive to that idea, or do most just kind of brush it off and say it's too much work? I don't want to have to deal with it. It doesn't make that big of a difference.
Yeah, most folks, unless they've done a little bit of work ahead of time, most are oblivious to them.
Mm-hmm.
They might know of like autumn olive because there's a bunch of strip mine ground that's covered in it, and like so they have preconceived notions that they're bad and they're pretty receptive. I do have, here and there you'll have like deer hunters who will want to keep their bush honeysuckle because that's where you find sheds. And so
Mm-hmm.
just explaining, you might find sheds there, but and because it's the only thing that's green in the winter, and that's the thought is that they bed there. But there's next to no nutritional content in these invasive species. And so, yeah, you might find antlers, but what if those deer were eating good stuff? Like, what if it wasn't just them dumpster diving and
Right.
eating crap? So, and then, going on to explain the benefits of all the native vegetation that, deer are browsers and not grazers, and the protein level and all these different things that people view as weeds, and how a little bit of TSI can just ta-da,
Make
build
world
it
of
and they will
difference.
come kind of thing. So, and absolutely nothing on, deer hunters. I myself, I can't fight it. I'm probably more of a deer person than even turkeys, and I'm a turkey person. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I started out that little redneck kid that was throwing buckets and buckets of corn out when I was little, like once a week, and checking cameras and, trying to do food plots and, never really working. And then, my job was kind of separate from hunting at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more that you learn, it's just it's the same. Forest management is wildlife management, and it is the I don't want to say the easiest way, but probably cheapest, I would say.
Yeah.
A little bit of work has a real big outcome, as opposed to doing food plots and um, all the things that deer hunters spend their money on for maybe a tiny bit of positive
Mm-hmm.
going out there. So it's astounding what a little bit of work can do in your woods and the effect that it can have.
For sure. Yeah, invasive species. I'm glad you said what you said. I never thought of this until just now. In a way, invasive species are kind of a blessing in a way, in the sense that you learn. Like me, for example, I tell people I've been killing invasives before it was cool. As a result of spraying so many invasives, I've learned so much more about my woods, plant species. Really, that's really about it. But then as a result of plant species, like how specialist species like grouse or pollinators or songbirds, the non-game, how they use a certain habitat, I wouldn't have learned any of that. I mean, I may have learned it eventually, but not as quickly, or I wouldn't have been as eager to learn about all that had I not been out there spraying invasives. And then it kind of opened my mind to, hey, look at all these little details that I've been missing. So in a way, invasive species have made me a better land manager. You missed that, Eric.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah, could you
Right.
repeat all that? Let's start over since when I left. I don't know the question.
Paige was bashing the deer hunters. I'm just kidding.
Oh, God. Let's pick it up from there.
About the
Yeah.
invasives, Paige, I did want to ask, when you're with a landowner, or pretend that Eric and I are landowners who you've come out to our property. Eric and I own property together, and we got a bunch of invasive species, but we don't want to manage them. You've communicated beautifully why we should remove them, but we don't want to because we are afraid of herbicides. How would you communicate to, again, Eric and I as examples, two people who are, for conversation's sake, anti-herbicide? We think it's poison. We think we're killing birds, butterflies, bees, and damaging the forest, this, that, and the other. This is a good opportunity for you to advocate for responsible use of herbicide as part of forest management. Give us the sell. Convince us.
So I would very carefully say, bye, Felicia. I'm out of here. Not really. Not really. Um, yeah, so I mean there is some fear with herbicide, and rightly so. You hear a lot of, negative stuff about it, and I mean it's not like it's completely safe, I would say. You have to, like anything, you have to respect it. So you have to use it within the label. You have to wear your PPE, things like that. There are herbicides that are more like volatile than others, but generally what we use for forest management, invasive species control, things like that, they're pretty darn safe. So the one that, I mean, it's kind of you could use it for any of the invasive species. Woody invasives is like triclopyr 4. You mix it at 20% with diesel fuel. And there's a fear that once it's in the tree, it can spread throughout the soil and kill all kinds of off-target stuff. And it's gonna, go up in the tree and kill bees and all kinds of things. But because it's oil-based, it tends to stay in the tree. There are water-based herbicides that can travel through soil, and like we have to be careful with those in a forested setting because it can kill like other trees, especially poplars. Um, but for the most part, what we use for invasive control is relatively safe. And, you know, what's the negative impact of not treating your invasive species? And what kind of effect do invasive species have on all types of wildlife, not just game species, but songbirds? I mean, there are tons of studies out there that show actual population declines of songbirds, just from eating like bush honeysuckle berries that they
Hmm.
can't read nutrition labels. So they're eating all of these berries to fatten up to fly south, and they think that they're just packing on the fat, packing on the fluff, and then they go to fly south and they burn out halfway there. When they burn out, it's still kind of, winter, or not necessarily a growing season that would have available food. So there's not really anything for them to eat wherever they land. So they don't make it to their destination. Um, Also, bush honeysuckle, the way that the shrub is formed, and if you have dense thickets, you can actually crawl underneath. And so there's a higher rate of predation on a lot of songbird species too, if they're nesting in invasive species. So it ain't good. It ain't good out there, but I think the to offset the negative impacts of invasive species, we have to use herbicide, and if done correctly, you can treat these things and just get them out of there. And while there might be a small impact with your herbicides, it's going to be very short term, as opposed to those invasives just compounding and getting so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, that was all really well said, and thank you for saying it. That's one thing with invasives, because just using autumn olive and bush honeysuckle, for an example, we were talking about it briefly just a second ago, because people, deer hunters, again, not to pick on deer hunters, but they see an autumn olive thicket or bush honeysuckle and they think, well, that's bedding, and deer do eat it, because if it's green and in their face, deer will eat everything. So it's easy to justify, because there are some invasives like Sericea, stiltgrass, where a lot of people are like, yeah, kill on sight, but there are some that you can get in your head about and justify, well, this could be good for deer, it could be good, and even bush honeysuckle, autumn olive for grouse, because it is thicket forming. It's a shrub, cover, food. You can get in your head about it and say, well, maybe it's better off to just leave it. But I'm glad you said what you said about the nutritional component.
Yeah.
Because we talk about, with grouse especially, again, deer, I tell people deer are the biggest liars in the woods, because you see deer eating something and you think that it's fine and it's good, or in their good habitat, and that's just not the case. But grouse, to their own detriment, they're not as good of liars as deer. So they I have no doubt eat autumn olive leaves when it's younger. Actually, Eric, some of your footage is of a grouse eating an autumn olive leaf. No doubt they eat the berries. So you see them eating it and you're like, well, okay, that has some value. But like you said, Paige, they can't read the nutrition, the nutrition label. So like with grouse, who are so sensitive to different habitat types or different, changes or whatever, and you said it with the songbirds, when that drastic change happens, they can't handle it as well as deer. So into a hen, instead of having 8 or 10 eggs during a nesting season, speaking about grouse, she only has 3 or 4. So when only one of those 8 or 10 makes it, 0 makes it. So it's this compounded effect that I hate to, make it sound more dramatic than what it is, but this is kind of how you have to look at it to take it seriously and to realize that it is work worth doing, because specialist species, non-game species, grouse, pollinators, songbirds, we see a deer eating autumn olive and we think it's fine. And honestly, for the deer, they will be, just candidly, they'll be fine. But for the rest of an ecosystem, that invasive species is more damaging to the ecosystem than a little bit of herbicide. And I hope that's what people took from what you said, and that's something we communicate a lot. And we try to drive home. It's, as you said, and Ethan Tapper said it as well, the presence of invasives is more damaging than the use of herbicide on the invasives.
Yeah. Did you know about that? I knew it, but didn't dawn on me. As soon as you said it, I was like, well, duh. The nutritional, like use the songbirds. That's a page we're going to steal that. At least I am. Thank you.
Paige,
for
you
it.
might be able to confirm or deny this, and if I'm wrong, then just deny it. I mean, it makes sense. The same principle applies to pollinators, because you see pollinators, bees and butterflies, on autumn olive flowers.
Yeah.
And they're attracted either, ideally, I guess, well, visually to the flower or maybe the scent. But again, nutritionally, they're getting next to nothing from it like they would from a native flower. And it's the
Well,
same
so
thing.
not only that, but you think about the tendencies of invasive species that they take off and they will completely inundate an area. They'll outcompete native stuff. I mean, that's just one of the reasons why they're so bad. They have no native predators. And so where you might have you say just a little footprint that could have a ton of diversity, you have nothing but autumn olive, or insert invasive species here. Um, and so that autumn olive, it flowers for what, 2 weeks? Depends on, the region. Cooler sites might start blooming a little bit later, and so forth. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but 2 weeks or so, and then what? If there's nothing else growing there, you have no other pollinating plants. And
Mm.
so I don't know about the nutrition or nutritional value or the usefulness to pollinators or things like that, but it's just the fact that there is not biodiversity, that there are no other options. And so you kind of touched on it too with the deer. Deer are generalists. When we manage for deer, we shouldn't be managing for quantity. We should be managing for quality. Whereas turkeys, grouse, quail, um, specialist species like that, we're managing for quality, or for quantity
Quantity.
and quality. Yeah, so we need to get them producing more poults, chicks, whatever, and sustain that. With deer, you're not doing that. You're honestly probably going the opposite way. You need to take out probably more doe, reduce your browse competition, increase your food. Also, their food is our forest. That's our regeneration. And so I have a love-hate relationship with deer because I sure like to hunt them. I sure like to eat them, but I'm also a forester and I sure like little oaks growing, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Um, but the more you manage, the more diversity you have, and maybe they're not just interested in little oak buds in the winter. Maybe they have a ton of other food, food options to choose from. And so you were saying too, they're kind of liars. So they're going to be eating, autumn olive here and there, and you're like, oh, that's a good food source. Well, not really. Honestly, they kind of show us a lot too, because you look at that browsed up, bush honeysuckle or autumn olive, but then you look around at all the other stuff that's eaten. So I don't think that they would necessarily go straight for an autumn olive that's all twiggy, branchy, and not really palatable. There's some kind of like call 'em cotton candy plants that they're gonna go after those babies first. They're full of nutrients. Maybe there's some cut stump. Maybe you did TSI and you cut that, and now it's mineral stumping. Which I don't know if you've touched on that, Eric. There's some rabbit holes we're jumping in here and there, but your mineral stumps, say you have a red maple and you cut it and you let it resprout, it kind of tricks the root system into just packing these little sprouts full of protein and all kinds of nutrients, carbohydrates, and it's just super, super high and really good stuff. And they load up on it and they'll just keep it mowed down. As soon as those sprouts come up, they'll mow them down. Um, but like that's super important as a food source. And so the more of that type of food you have, the more 4B vegetation, maybe old field reversion kind of stuff. There's going to be other food opportunities there. And so even in your woods, you have, greenbrier sprouting up. You see the little tips nipped off. So that's tender and prime and full of nutrients. So if you see some of the cotton candy plants that are just mowed to the ground and have been for a while, and then some of those like medium level, like, all right, we like them, but we're gonna go for other stuff first. That's mowed to the ground, and then they're eating little ailanthus sprouts that they don't smell good. They for sure cannot taste good.
Hmm.
So if they're eating those and they're eating the other invasive species that just aren't really even palatable, they've gone through how much food, are they're really looking. They're really looking at that point. So that's where a little bit of management comes in. You can, take a look in your woods, and the more you know, I guess the less you know. So knowledge is power. Knowledge is liberating. The more you know, the more you understand, and then the more you understand, the less you realize you actually know, if that makes sense. And so,
Makes
A
perfect
t-shirt.
sense. You guys stand by.
That's a t-shirt.
so
Write that down, Cody.
you
Write it.
get in the woods and you learn your trees, and that is a fantastic start. And then you start to see how wildlife uses it and what different management techniques can do. And then you're sitting there in your tree stand and you're not watching for deer, you're looking around and thinking about the TSI you could be doing, or like, hey, that tree dropped over there. Look at everything that's using it. So it's just all the interconnectedness. The more you understand, it's mind blowing, and you can just create really cool projects, I guess, utilizing some of that stuff.
You guys ready
So.
for story time? I'm going to read you a
Oh,
poem.
I like story time.
I love what you said, Paige, about the more you know about nature, essentially the less you know, which I think that's more of a mindset approach, because the more you learn, the more you want to learn, and the more you learn, or I guess the more humble you become, because you realize there is more to learn. But anyway, it's from this Daniel Boone book I read. Highly recommend anybody watching to read it. But it's an Emily Dickinson poem, and I'm going to get this framed, Eric, if I can ever remember to do it, like on a canvas. But the poem is, "But nature is a stranger, yet the ones that sight her most have never passed her haunted house nor simplified her ghost. To pity those that know her not is helped by the regret that those who know her less the nearer her they get." So basically, that was just a poem by Emily Dickinson that said what Paige just said, basically.
Yeah.
That
I
the
like
more you
Paige's
learn, the less you know. And that's not an insult or like
No.
anything negative. It should be like a motivator or, inspiration. And when I read that, I was like, man, that is so cool, because the more you learn about the natural world, you learn about deer. And that, I mean, for most people, myself and Paige, you mentioned it as well. I think most people can relate to that was the first door they opened into the natural world, was deer and deer hunting. Well, you open that door, and then you learn about turkeys, and then you learn about grouse, and then you learn about quail, and then you learn about habitat, and then you learn about specialist habitats and young forest. So it's all that to say, I love that poem. I love that mindset that the more you learn, actually, the less you learn, because you realize the more you have to learn. But anyway,
I like
Paige,
it.
that was
I
really well
expect
said.
a full back tattoo of that entire thing.
Darn.
We're going strictly back now.
But no, like, I mean, that what you said kind of reminds me, this might show my age, I don't know, but if you think of, I'm gonna try to explain it the best I can, but that meme where it's like, a guy thinking, and then the next one is like his mind's blown a little bit more, and then the next one is he's like, you know.
Mm.
So I feel like with wildlife management of all sorts, any species, it starts out as, I really like hunting these things. And then you learn a little bit and I don't know, we hear a lot about, predators. So it's, you know, coyotes and bobcats. It kind of starts out there, and then, oh, well, it's nest predators, skunks, coons, possums, things like that. Oh, well, it's aerial predators. And then, like, you start thinking more, and you're like, well, these springs, what's this weather doing to, poult production, chick production? And then come to find out, just
Mm.
wildlife, forest management, things like that can fix almost every one of those things. That forest management can be the answer to food supply as far as like quantity goes, food quality, cover, predators. There's a cool thing, it's called buffer prey. So you do some forest
Mm.
management and you do, like, for example, edge feathering. A lot of people start to notice more coyotes and bobcats on their trail cameras, but it's not necessarily fawns and
Yeah.
poults and chicks and things that they're hunting. It's moles, voles, rabbits, what have like those little things that I'm not saying that they don't matter, but that's how nature creates it, where there's a bunch of, there's a variety. As long as there's diversity, it's not just, predators going after your favorite wildlife baby, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
good
with all that being
stuff.
said, what's that?
Cool stuff.
It is cool stuff. With all that being said, I mean, what's the Paige Rice version of opinion on like what is the future looking like? Like within your industry, I know it's kind of a blah question, but what's the what am I trying to say? It's just it feels like we're going forward and we go back, and it's with the mindset of getting people to be entertained, but what you're saying. You know, let me answer it this way: if I was a person that's not against this logging aspect of things, let me ask you that way. um, how do you convince me? Like, how do we convince people that right is right? You know, it feels like there's a lot of people grew up with the Lorax, that mentality and the rainforest and all that stuff, and it's the millennial generation. They just been pounded with all that stuff, and you only know what you know, right? You never heard the other side of the coin, and here we are going, no, cut a tree, killing a tree is good. You're like, what? So how do we you have the floor, like how do we convince people that this is good for wildlife, this is good for the forest ecology, forest ecosystem? It was a
So,
long-winded question to get to there, but yes.
and it might take some turns, but we'll just keep reminding
Yeah.
you, we'll get there eventually. I don't think forest management is that hard of a sell to people. A lot of these call before you cuts, they don't have any of that in mind. They don't even know it's a thing. I'm impressed that they knew that a forester existed. That's one of the biggest things is people just do not realize that a forester is a profession, is a thing,
Hmm.
anything like that. I mean, half of my family still thinks I'm a park ranger, so they don't actually know what I do. Um, so, I mean, getting the word out there that foresters exist and what they do. When I show up to these landowner visits that are call before you cuts and I start talking about, like, hey, you're not quite ready, maybe in 10 years, but if you take out some of these ugly trees that have no timber value, that's going to help your big trees, your merchantable trees to grow. It's also going to get your future forest growing. Um, you know, all these things, their mind is blown and they're inspired, and a lot of them want to start doing invasive species control and that management, as soon as possible. And so we come up with a plan and start doing that. So I don't think that that's really a hard sell. I think the first thing is getting people to realize that forestry is a thing, that foresters are real people. Um, and then aside from management, I mean, we need to be talking clear cuts and habitat creation and especially around here, just commercial clear cuts. I just don't know that they're really possible with the current markets. We got to work on the economics side of things. And I'll tell you, I became a forester because I didn't like math and I didn't want to work with people. And that couldn't be any more
It's
opposite.
the
And so,
opposite. I'm like, wait a minute. That's all you
and
do is math and work with people.
I I feared public speaking, yet here we are. I'm just, doing the thing, facing fears. And so now that's just commonplace. That's just normal. I feel like my next step into that is, we don't like economics or politics. And so I feel like that's where we have to go with things. It's time to face our fears and there's smart people everywhere. There's innovative people everywhere, and we just need, I don't know, we need more markets. And so I know the paper mill in Chillicothe, this is I'm gonna explain it terribly, but it's a specific kind of paper. It's like the transfer paper where you have like your pink, blue, and white sheet and all that. And I think
Mhm.
pretty sure that's like all they created there. And so at this day and age, we don't really use that anymore. I mean, we still use paper. I've heard it cited somewhere in 2020 when COVID was happening. There was actually a bump in paper usage instead of, just virtual stuff. So people are still using paper. We just need to diversify markets. How you do that? I'd rather try to figure out the world cure for hunger and things like that. But,
Yeah.
there are smart people everywhere that I feel like, that's kind of where we're headed.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's frustrating because, and I've said this, Cody's probably tired of me saying it. When we got into this Give for Grouse initiative, it's like, okay, all we got to do is promote logging and it's all be good. And when you start diving into it, you're realizing it's like you don't have enough toes and fingers to plug holes. This needs fixed before that needs fixed. Who would have thought a paper mill shutting down would be so devastating to wildlife, especially more specifically grouse? You know, Cody and I were talking about it, I think yesterday, how important that paper mill is to where he's at, and toward Covington, Virginia. And if you shut that down, I mean, 100 acres a day roughly it takes to run that area or that mill, and was 100 miles some of those places.
Pulpwood comes in from, on
Yeah.
average, that's what's wild to me, on average, 100 miles,
Yeah.
which there are people cutting 5 miles up the road from the paper mill. So I'm like Paige, I'm not good at math, but to get an average of 100 when there's somebody cutting 5 miles up the road, somebody's bringing it from a long ways down the road.
Yeah.
That's a lot of timber. That's
Look
a lot of wood moving.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a
look
lot of
how
habitat at
important.
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and
it's
this
just crazy.
this general area right here, we have little Amish sawmills that,
Mhm.
it doesn't really quantify to be a whole lot. But like Weyerhaeuser and West Virginia, they specialize in OSB. That's 120 miles. The main Amish area north of me where a lot of stuff goes is 120 miles. So, and even Chillicothe. I don't know how many miles, but
That's a
it's
poke from
probably
you.
right around
Yeah.
120 miles. So
Yeah.
even when we did have that market, it was still tough, getting stuff that way. And that was in a heavily forested county too. So they had a lot of local stuff coming in.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Deer. We touched a little bit about deer. Why are you guys laughing? Did you guys already talk about deer?
No, it's just, you seem like I don't know, you're like a puppy who just woke up from a nap.
I did.
You're like
I
in
did.
La La Land.
I know. Sorry. I'm awake now. Let's start over. This is how these things usually go, Paige.
I was wondering, I don't know if I need to help you or like you got a thought. I
No,
didn't
I'm
want to
sitting there
interrupt, but I
just
was
like,
like,
I
he'll
have a
get there.
million
He
things I
just,
want to ask her. Just trying to check it off. Hey, I'm old. We got to go slow her down a little bit. Hang on a second. Yeah, so deer. It's just, I know Cody and I, we need to start like actually starting to address that elephant in the room a little bit. There's many elephants in the room, but deer populations is one of them. And in your workings in those counties, I mean, are you seeing that much of a negative impact? Is like, you go to Pennsylvania and they have those enclosures, in the national forest, and it's just like night and day difference, the mismanagement. But yeah, so in Ohio, I mean, you see it, correct? I mean, are you seeing like we need to really start addressing this issue?
Yeah, and like I said, I'm a huge deer hunter and I'm a bow hunter myself. And part of it comes from that kind of bow hunter trophy buck mentality where you hunt all season long for that one buck because, we have game cameras that show us the five different bucks on our property and we name them all different things. And well, this year it's Banjo's time to go. Like we're it's his time to go and we're not playing around. We're gonna do all the things right and nobody has time for doe management. So that's the thing is there's just so many deer and honestly, if we killed more does, if we kept in mind what the carrying capacity for deer are on any given, property, carrying capacity is that level where that's what with this X amount of acreage and the vegetation that can grow, this is the amount of deer that this property could hold. Um, and quite often it is so far above that. We have so many deer. And so, doe management is a huge thing. But honestly, from my understanding, it's kind of a people problem there. So I've heard like the deer biologist with Division of Wildlife talking about, this year we had EHD really bad. I mean, really bad. Deer, dead deer everywhere. Any creek bottom, you couldn't roll your windows down driving in the truck. Like it stunk everywhere. So a ton of dead deer. But he was saying that they saw like a 75% decrease in buck harvests. And so they did it in these counties that were affected. And I might get this slightly wrong, but this was my interpretation. Um, so 75% decrease, and I didn't know if that was from, actual less people like having less opportunities to kill bucks, or if people were self-regulating. And so they did aerial surveys with drones and thermal drones, and they, counted the deer in any given, whatever. And they found that there's still a ton of deer. And so it was people just self-regulating. And, you kind of got to give it to them. That's really good to show reservation, to not, over harvest. People, worried about the future hunting opportunities. And so
Yeah.
that is impressive. Um, but it turns out that even when there's, we have our six deer statewide limit. You have to obviously kill them in different counties, but we can kill six deer per year. And the amount of people that actually kill six deer a year, it's like less
One
than
percent.
1%. Yeah.
Yeah. We call it the 1% club. Yeah.
And I guess you could probably speak a little closer to that too. But it's like, isn't it the average hunter only kills on average like two deer, two does?
Yeah, I think it's actually even we just had this. I think it was like I think it was, yeah, maybe one, let's just say two for conversation. That was it. And then it drops off dramatically three, four, five, six. And those drone surveys, it was round, I think the average was 50 deer per square mile. And there was pockets of 100 deer per square mile. I
Well,
said we
there
have
you
a deer problem.
go. We have a deer problem.
We have a deer.
We have a people problem. We just, with everything, we just need more education out there.
Yeah.
Any one of those, hunters that were self-regulating, if that info was put out for them, I feel like, those are the people that are hungry for information. They want to do what's best for these wildlife, species so that they have future opportunities so that they can pass that culture on to their kids and they can continue to hunt, with their kids and grandkids into the future and just, be confident that they're, you know, the youngins are going to have the same opportunity that they have.
Yeah.
So if any of those folks back in the day that were just drowning in grouse, if they knew now what we know, would they have been hungry for that information and tried to change things, or, I don't know. Those are big questions. So,
Yeah. And the thing too is like we had Mark Wiley on. He's the upland biologist for the Division of Wildlife. And Cody and I always get this wrong. So I think it was 1960 something. There was like 8 million, no, wait, 6 million something acres or what have you of timber. And there was a 1 million acre difference between young forest and forest. Mature air quote, right, Cody? I think it was like 1
I
million
forget.
difference.
We need to revisit that. Basically, it's FIA, Forest Inventory Analysis.
Yeah.
I think we are misquoting it, but of all the forested acres in Ohio, 60s or 70s, it was just for conversation, say it was 8 million. An enormous percentage of that 8 million was young forest. And then now it is the complete
800,
inverse.
I do know this number. It's 800,000 acres of young forest compared to millions of acres we have in the state. So you're not getting that accomplished, producing that. And then you have the deer population. And then deer populations, and pick a state, it's not so much, it is so much trying to convince people to kill, but it's just like trees. Where do you put the product? You can only eat so many, you know. So, farmers and hunters feeding the hungry. I know in your neck of the wood, Paige, those counties I don't think they have a FHFH to where they can drop off deer, a donation type thing. Because I have clients in Noble County that there isn't anything in that region to drop
I'm
off deer. They'd have
thinking
to go
on the
all the way up to,
lookup, yeah,
huh?
there's like a few, I think, if you
Yeah,
do the website lookup thing, but like again, people just don't know about it. So it's
yeah,
just it's getting the word out there. And how do you do that?
yeah,
But like with you quoting that, part of it, like this air, well, all of Ohio, all of the eastern US was just super heavily farmed. And then there was a point when it was kind of all left to grow back, or some
mm,
of it was left to grow back. And so, we're never going to be in that exact point, hopefully, in history again, hopefully.
yeah,
Um, but, and it's not just deer, over browsing. It's, unsustainable timber harvests. It's the way that we harvest has changed. And so there was a lot of clear cutting back then that was like commonplace. So just like prescribed fire has a negative connotation, even though it's a fantastic thing, clear cutting is the exact same way. And it's like, how do you change the mindset of the general population? I remember in grade school, we had Smokey Bear just absolutely shoved down our throats. And then, all of these different, like I remember clear cutting and like different uh, environmental, you know, topics, kind of like we were taught this stuff. And then come to find out, it's bigger than that. It's a bigger picture that's more intricate. And so how do you change the mindset? Is the big thing.
yeah. And that's just like you said, it's education. Like you talked about it earlier. Just it's not a race. It's a marathon. And as much as I get frustrated, we get frustrated on this. Just got to keep going, moving forward. Put the content out. Put the content out. It's funny you mentioned Smokey Bear, and only you can prevent forest fires. So I sent this meme to Cody yesterday.
Took me a minute to get it. I was like,
Yeah,
what
it
in the
did.
world?
It's like, okay, only you, right? Only you, Paige, can prevent forest fires. So this guy he did a reel, and it was being the only one who can prevent forest fires is starting to stress me out.
Yep. I shared the exact same thing.
It's so funny. What's that?
I shared the exact same one.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, I shared that to Cody yesterday. That was hilarious, man. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
there's a.
so
Go ahead.
so like with another example of that is with call before you cut. you hear a lot where the landowners have either they've interpreted it a different way, or like the logger that's knocking on their door, trying to sell them this timber sale has explained it in a way that's not 100% true, where they'll say, well, we're just gonna do it's basically a diameter limit cut where it's, 18 inches and up, 18 inches diameter and up, or maybe 16 or wherever. And so the thought behind that is, well, we're going to take the bigger trees out, they have the most value, and we're going to leave the small trees to grow. So at that point, they don't really mention, species, or maybe they do, but, to someone who does not, have any knowledge of forest management or forestry in general, um, that sounds pretty good. But, the way we talked about how our cropland and pastures and, it was clear cut, and different land use history has grown these trees back. A lot of times these trees are the same age, or roughly the same age. And so your bigger trees aren't older and your smaller trees aren't younger. Um, they're mostly the same age, and by taking out the big ones, you're taking out the more vigorous, more successful ones. Maybe those smaller ones were stunted in the understory, and when you take the bigger stuff off, maybe they won't get a whole lot bigger. Maybe it's a poor site. It depends a lot on the species. You'll see good oak hickory overstories with a ton of beech and maple underneath, and those are itty bitty trees. And yeah, they're gonna once you give it a haircut and you take the big stuff off, that beech and maple is gonna grow up. But is there gonna be oak in the future? And so, um, a lot of folks when they're thinking timber harvest and that logger's knocked on their door and told them what the deal is, it makes a lot of sense. But those poor timber harvest practices, and we would call that a high grade, that has led to a lot of the issues that we have now with, over mature um, forests, closed canopy forests, where it's nothing but canopy, and then underneath it's basically a biological desert. You don't have little regenerating oaks or really trees of any sort. There's not enough sunlight to get 4B vegetation, all that low food that's available for animals. Um, so, I mean, that's an aspect too, is just not only is it, lack of clear cut, but it's also poor timber harvests. And so if you can manage that over time, maybe you get your invasive species out of there and do your call tree removal, and then you have kind of like an intermediate harvest, and then you use those really good overstory oak trees as your crop trees, and then you're kind of leading into a shelterwood harvest that creates a whole lot of sunlight and a whole lot of grouse habitat. There's every property has different opportunities, and it's not, a one prescription is a fix all. It's you have to customize everything to your property and the topography and the aspect, so the way that the slope faces. You're not going to manage for oaks in a poplar stand. So um, just using a forester, and then even if you don't have a forest management plan written, just coming up with a plan yourself. Maybe you consulted the forester and that he or she told you, this is what you need to do in the next 5 or so years. Writing that down, prioritizing which areas to work on and what to work on first. It's just that's the way to do it. So it's not, looking at the hunting channel, the pursuit channel, and hinge cutting acres and acres, or you know
Yeah.
any one prescription. So
Yeah.
foresters are a good first step.
Yeah. So, how has your job changed in the 4 years that you've been doing this? I mean, what major thing have you seen that's like, hey, we're heading in the right direction, or like, yikes, this is different? I mean, has anything, or does this kind of stay the same?
I wouldn't say anything has changed out there. I would say I have definitely learned so much more. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I I feel like I was definitely in good shape whenever I got into this position, but I don't know. I think you were off off out there when Cody and I were talking about it. When I first started, I was a hunter and then I was a forester. And then as you learn more about forestry, it's like those things kind of merge and
Hmm.
you just learn so much more and you realize how interconnected it is.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I've grown. Um, I don't know. I've found ways to, at first it's just like you don't know what you don't know and there's just so much to it and it's kind of daunting. And then now that I've gotten kind of the pieces put together, I can find the inspiration behind stuff. And when I'm inspired, I can inspire other people. When I'm overwhelmed and, don't know what the heck is going on, that's when things go downhill. So that's
Hmm.
been huge too, is just I'm finding the positives and things. I've had some awesome landowners who have been doing some really cool work. We're working on a property together that should be
Yeah.
pretty tasty in the future.
Hmm.
So folks like that are just like dead set that they're going to do something and it's going to be positive and they need our expertise, but they're cranking it out. Those are the ones that like really make this worth it and really make you feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good
That was
deal.
well said. Paige, I got a question. I don't know the best way to phrase it. What has been? I guess I'll just phrase it. What has been your experience as a woman working in, I guess, a male dominated industry? I can't think of a more specific way to ask. I hate to ask you such a vague question. Well, for one, I would prop yourself up and knock the men down. What attributes as a woman do you bring to the table that I feel like would, or you feel like would be of more value than a male forester? Because a lot of the hunts, I film a lot of hunts all over the place, and obviously it's mostly men doing the hunting, and guides and outfitters are always encouraged and excited to hunt with a woman, with a female, because the different personality, the different energy, they're just candidly, they're just a hell of a lot easier to deal with. They listen better, they communicate better, they're more patient. And I don't have any, I have very, very little experience with a female forester. I spent a half a morning with her. And I tried to, it was a husband and wife team. And I tried to, I was just following them along in the woods as they were marking timber on my place. And I tried to do it intentionally to see how, I don't know if it makes sense, but how I felt with one versus the other, if that makes sense. And I don't know if it's just because it was new and different, but working with the female forester was a breath of fresh air. It's certainly, whether we admit it or not as men, like, pun intended, it's a cockfight. Like, that testosterone and that ego is always present. And whether it's noticeable or not, like, that's just how the male species works. Like, we're inadvertently trying to one up each other. Males and, men and women working together in your field, I feel like it may lead to better work being done if you're working with landowners who are men who are open to working with a woman in your position. And I guess I hate to overload you with questions again, but candidly, honestly, working with loggers or landowners, do you ever feel slighted being a woman and showing up, getting out of the truck, and that first look being like, ooh, that's not what I mean, your name is Paige, but you would think they would know that beforehand. But I hope that gave you some direction to the vaguely worded question I asked in the
Yeah, that's not
beginning.
the story I heard because I know Cody, he was like, the men are talking. If you could just be quiet. That's what you said to her. I think that's the story I heard. Like, the men are talking. I don't know what you're here for. Here is water, please. No.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's again, it's a people problem. It's very few and far between, but it does happen that there are, landowners or, whoever are just kind of dismiss what I have to say and it's kind of apparent that, it's because I'm a woman, but the longer you're there and the more you can I guess, not really even prove to them, but like, as I'm walking, I can't help it. Like I said, I have squirrel brain. I'm pointing out, like, I saw leatherwood this morning and that was cool. So that thing you can like tie in a knot. It's a native plant and it's
Mm.
the only, little stem that you can tie in a knot and it doesn't break. And so like really cool stuff like that. I'm always pointing out new or fancy little species that people don't know about, or like I'll be walking and thinking, oh, well, this is a good place for a tree stand. And then they're like, oh, well, there's one right there. Or like, this looks like a good bedding area. And then you look and there's beds right there. And it just, you got to give yourself a little pat
Mm.
on the shoulder. But I think just as the more time that we spend with these landowners, and the more you can explain and the more you can relate it to them and you can relate to them, the more that they respect you, just like anybody else. But for the most part, people have been honestly pretty good. Um, we actually have a good bit of female foresters, service foresters within the Division of Forestry. So I don't feel like it's maybe for landowners, it's not really commonplace, but within Division of Forestry, it's definitely not. Um, but again, I mean, there's duds everywhere. You're gonna deal with crappy people one way or another just because they've got problems. Um, and you just end up in their world with them. So honestly, it hasn't been bad. I think, and I don't know that it's like a feminine quality, but I feel like when I'm out, with a landowner, I take my time and describe stuff. I explain stuff. I think I communicate well. This podcast might be a crapshoot. I don't know. Y'all might be like, no,
No.
girl, you got it wrong.
No, not at all. You're
I'm
doing
under
great.
pressure. But
No, you're doing fine.
but in general, I feel like I communicate well, and I feel like, that it wouldn't necessarily be a feminine quality, but that could be something. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's been all right.
I feel like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I guess I kind of agree that it is a feminine quality, but um, I've
I
worked
also
with.
agree with you. Men try to outcompete each other. So how many times I've been, with another forester who's a man and the landowner, like they're walking up a hill and neither one of them wants to act like they're out of breath. And they gotta be, they're outpacing each other just because they can't show weakness. Like I understand that. I also am just out of shape no matter what. So I'm like, y'all do your
Well,
thing.
let me interrupt you
Go
because
ahead.
the day that we were on the property of my clients, I think you were pregnant.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and I
been
was
a
trying to
trend.
just outcompete her. That was like, I can't let her. I was trying to just like, I can't have her show me up. Yeah,
Yeah, that second time, I think I was like 8 months pregnant, and the
she's out
thought
there.
was we scheduled that a few months in advance, and we're like, well, the landowner has a side by side, we'll make it work. And then, so this my second kid, and the second go round, like I felt completely normal, like I did not feel pregnant, so I was just chugging up hills. I felt
Yeah,
great. So I'm sorry if I made you feel
yeah, and
any
I
type of way.
appreciate. I was waiting on an apology for a long time. Actually.
My apologies.
Yeah. Paige, this has been great, man. I'm sure I don't know how much time you got. We'll let you get moving unless Cody's got some other stuff you want to.
No, we've checked all of our boxes. This
Yeah,
is yeah,
yeah,
Paige. Yeah, Eric's always spoken highly of you, so I had high expectations, but this has certainly exceeded them for sure.
yeah. We'll definitely have you back on, and we'll get down more specifics. Really wanted this to people to introduction to who you are, because I tell you, I not to make it feel awkward or anything. I think you're a rock star, and I would love for you
Appreciate
to
it.
be a part of Cody and I's movement with Give for Grouse initiative, some way or fashion, just someone to lean to or lean on or whatever, excuse me, um, and what have you. So that's, like I said, we'll get more in the nitty gritty of stuff later and what have you. I just want to introduce the world to you and stuff. And I know the people that you work with talk real highly of you as well, even John Keane, who doesn't like anybody. So,
That's good to know. I appreciate it.
yeah. But no, you have anything you want to say before we let you go?
No. Appreciate the opportunity. This is just one of those, like you said, I feel like it was kind of a teaser because we hit so
Yeah.
many different
Yeah.
topics that, we could just, any one of them, we could dive in and spend
Oh,
forever talking
absolutely.
about. So
Yeah.
this is what gets me excited and gets me feeling all passionate about stuff and
Mhm.
inspirational. So not to
Yeah.
sound all ooey gooey, but man, that's you gotta love what you do or, whatever, however that saying goes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, good
We do
deal.
have one question we got to ask you, Paige.
Oh,
We ask
yeah.
all of our guests if you've listened and you know what's coming, but if not, then you don't, and you'll soon find out. So the question is, we always ask people at the end of the episode, if you got one, and hopefully you do, what's your most meaningful or memorable, special experience or memory with a ruffed grouse is. If you've got one that comes to the top of your head, I'll give you a second to think about it. A flush or hearing one drum or a landowner telling you a story. If you've got a story reference to ruffed grouse that means a lot to you, you'd be happy to share with us.
yeah, so I can't say that I'm a grouse hunter. I just, they haven't been plentiful whenever I've been of hunting age. Haven't really delved into that, but like I said, in our few little, it's like township size area. Um, I mean, things are still plentiful. I grew up and we have a ton of whippoorwills, and I didn't like they were just the most annoying thing as a kid. We had a tree right outside the window, and they would just go off, go crazy. I hated those things. And then I get into this field, and people are talking about whippoorwills. You never hear them anymore. Same with grouse. And didn't realize how special it was, when I was younger. Kind of similar thing. Like my dad hunted with me, and it was mostly deer and turkey hunting, but a little bit of squirrel hunting, a little bit of rabbit hunting, but not a whole lot more. I don't think he had ever explained to me what a grouse was. So I was probably, I'm not going to say what age because I legally probably should not have been in a tree stand by myself. I think we're past the statute of limitations at this point. But it was, bow season in the fall, and it was hot, and it was like sort of kind of close to the neighbor where he had this like this is a side note. He had this goat that I don't know what happened, but it did not make goat sounds. It made some just crazy sounds, and you're like, what the heck is that? So I knew the goat made crazy sounds. But I'm sitting there and I thought he was out there trying to push mow his yard, and he just couldn't get the thing running. And I'm like, what in the world? I was seething at this point because this was like, I don't know, 20th time, 20th attempt at getting this lawnmower started. And I'm like, goodness gracious, give it up. I'm trying to hunt here. My little, you know, 12-year-old self is just like, fuming at this point. And then I start to hear little pitter patters, like not a deer, but something. And it's not a squirrel. And look around and I'm like, the hell's this chicken doing up here?
He let chickens out now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the goat, now he's got the chicken up here. And I'm like, that's not a chicken. And it just bebopped around and moved off. And I don't know, I went home and told dad, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a grouse. And I'm like, huh, okay. And I never really thought anything of it, just like
Mm.
the whippoorwill. And then, now on down the line, how special that was to just, have that experience when they're so few and far between.
Yeah.
So kind of a
Mm.
cool little situation.
Oh, shoot,
But
yeah. That's one of the best
I wish
stories
I
I've
had the
heard.
That's
super
up there.
inspirational, like paint the picture of the sunrise, but no, I'm sorry, it's
No, you had us at goat.
goat screams and
Anytime you can tell a story and put a goat in there, you got our attention.
yep.
Oh,
It's
shoot.
so
That was cool.
neat.
I like that story.
You are something else. I love it.
Mm.
Oh, well, shoot. Well, again. Thank you so much for coming on, and just stay on the line here. And
Yep.
go from there. Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity. It's been good. Been
Yes, ma'am.
great.
Oh, boy.
Drum roll. Stretch
Okay.
stamp of approval.
Ooh, stamp.
Paige Rice. She kind of already gave it to her. I mean, you know her. You knew her prior
Yeah.
to, had worked with her prior to, but
Yeah. No, Paige, I can't. I tell you what, I mean, that was just a sliver of her personality. Now, you get her off the mic,
yeah,
she will make you laugh, man. And the thing is like she knows her stuff, and she only knows what she knows, and she's like, nope, I don't. And she's very honest, like, no, don't know that,
yeah,
but this is what I do know. And yeah, I mean, the future is bright in the state of Ohio if she continues to be a service forester for the state of Ohio. But yeah, she gets a solid A and then some. I mean, I think, I mean, we got to figure out a way. We got some great people that whenever we make it, we're gonna have a hell of a staff one day. You could send Paige off to give a seminar to any. You imagine sitting in a crowd listening to her talk.
yeah.
It's like, where's the popcorn at? I want to hear little mannerisms and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
She
Yeah.
has a gift.
She does, and she doesn't know it. That's the best part.
Yeah,
She don't know it.
it's one thing, a common theme we reiterate, in all the guests that we've had is being a good communicator. And she is unique to everybody else. The wit, the charm,
Yeah.
the personality, the humor. But on top of it, she knows her stuff. On top of all that, she seems like a real straight shooter.
Oh,
I think
sure.
if we were to, not that we would, but if she were to get in a corner, find herself in a corner about deer and baiting and invasive species, she'd scratch and claw and punch her way out of it. Like she's going to tell you how she feels.
Yeah, no one's putting baby in a corner. No way.
She'll tell you how she feels, whether you like it or want to hear it or not. She's gonna tell you what she thinks and how she feels and why, which is good. Again, that is a trait of an effective communicator. And I don't know, you could do a series of podcasts on the psychology between men and women and difference in communication. But I think women tend to be that way more than men. Yeah. You know what I mean? And being able to communicate things that you might not want to hear, but they do it anyway, number one, but can do it in a way that it's like if a guy were to do the same thing, they may be a little scrappy or, just the ego and the testosterone involved. It doesn't come out as clearly. But women, they have the ability to communicate things calmly and more confidently, which is, I think, a phenomenal trait to have, and especially in any male-dominated industry, forestry especially. Like, you need somebody to crack the whip, or just send in Paige. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like calling the lefty.
She's already given me 2 assignments. They have to find a girlfriend or wife to spray invasive species with and a back tattoo. So I've already got one. She already gave me homework.
She went full back tattoo. It was, dude, I was crying, man. I was trying not to make a scene. It was hilarious. Yeah, she's great. Not to beat the dead horse, but yeah, it's just I don't know how we keep finding these incredible people. What we are, and yeah, she has a lot of confidence, but at the same time, she's so humble. Her background's pretty cool. Like she grew up hunting and stuff like that, and not that you have to, but it does help. Let's be honest.
It's important.
It is very important, and she's a realist. That's the coolest part. But very humble. But man, she's a very confident woman. That's awesome, you know. But yeah, I would love to see her in a seminar. It would be, and somebody trying to outdo her. It'd be a great time. With some popcorn, let her eat. But no, yeah, look forward to having her back on. I think for sure we'll have her a couple times. Yeah. So
I don't think it was on air, but spilled beans. You and I have talked about doing an invasive species specific, and summer's a good time to do that.
Yeah.
Episode about invasive species and how to identify it. Just the whole, because a lot of our episodes have been pretty generic or
Yeah.
we've skimmed the surface, which we only got so much time, to talk about so many different things. And that's kind of been by design, but with a lot of people that we've had on, Noah, Jesse, John, even Wes in the hunting side of things, we've skimmed the surface, and then start having a lot of these people back on to kind of unpack the layers and get into the nitty gritty and specifics. And with Paige, she seems just as passionate as I am about invasive species. So have her on to 101 and then some: identification, how to kill them, when to kill them, herbicides, this, that, and the other. I think would be one a lot of people would learn a lot from.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely right. This podcast here was just a teaser, if you will. And she does seem very knowledgeable about that. Definitely pick that up. And my homework assignment is to look up leatherwood. I had no idea what the hell she was talking about. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it and seen pictures.
Yeah.
I'm sure I may have seen it in person, but I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
I see pictures this time of year. My Facebook is inundated with pictures of native plants and this, that, and the other. So learn a ton from it.
There you go.
I haven't had a good Facebook scrap in a while, because usually those groups I hate to pick on them. It's funny. I'll get sidetracked for a second. Virginia Native Plant Society group. I've told you about them a bunch. I learn a ton from the people in that group about plant identification, nuances about native plants, a whole bunch of different cool things. I mean, there's botanists, ecologists, professionals in the group for sure. But a lot of the people, a lot of my Facebook scraps come with people in that group because they're managing habitat in their 10 by 10 native habitat garden in their backyard in Richmond, Virginia. So when they come out swinging about using herbicide for stilt grass, it's not well received. But
yeah, I was wondering why you started off with that question. I knew there had to have been some. Yeah, good stuff. But no, kind of wrap it up there. Till next time, right? Thanks everybody for supporting Give for Grouse initiative and listening to the Give for Grouse podcast. We really do appreciate every single one of you. As Cody mentioned, if you want some stickers and some merch, stickers, just leave a review, send proof of the review, and somebody will get that to you. And then also shirts. Don't forget about the merch. Shirts, same size, 25. Hoodies, we have a sale at $30. Order a size up. And as always, as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving.